welcome to another exciting episode of PC Voyage. I'm Diana McLean.
And I'm Randy Laviolette.
And this is our guest for tonight, Keith Woods. Hi, Keith. How are you?
Hi, Diana. Hi, Randy.
How you doing, Keith?
Pretty good, thank you.
What are you going to show us tonight?
Well, I would like to discuss for just a little bit what databases are, why you would want to use databases, and then show you one choice that I use a lot, which is Borland's paradox.
How much databases have you used?
I've been using databases on the PC for about 4 years, but on other platforms such as a mainframe or on an HP for a total of about seven or 8 years.
An expert.
Well, an expert when you consider that the PC has been around for only 10, 15 years, the fact that the databases have evolved as fast as they have is pretty remarkable.
For people that don't know, what is a database?
A database is a collection of data. For instance, you might have a mailing list or a list of names. Think of your family, a list of information that you want to hold on to. It could be anything. It could be names, it could be dollar amounts, it could be dates. It could be something that you're tracking, such as here is something that I do on a regular basis, and here's the date that I did it. It might also be how much I spent for a CD or a record or for anything, if you think of a store's inventory. They store information about who sells it, where did they buy it, how much it costs, when did they get it, when was the last stock. It's a collection of data, and it can be represented in any way. You can just think of it sort of as a meat locker of information.
So what distinguishes it from a spreadsheet?
Well, a spreadsheet pretty much is for a very quick calculation. It stores data, but its purpose is to generate and show information right away. A database is more historical. In other words, its purpose should be to hold information for a period of time, and the tool that the database lives in is what might actually make the difference between what you might choose. In other words, how it's presented. But the database is more geared towards historically, and the spreadsheet is for the moment.
Okay.
What different kinds of databases are there?
There's a number of databases. You can have a database. Some people will look at a database as maybe just a strictly flat file. In other words, there isn't any kind of unique identifier to each record. You can then start going into relational databases, which will take that data that you might have and start putting it into unique tables or unique files that each file is related to each other by a certain key. If you can use this relational database format, then you can access data faster and better because the amount of data that you store is going to be smaller. So accessing it is going to be much faster. And the modern databases that are showing up first on mainframes, and then as soon as they can find out that it works great on mainframes, you want to downsize it to the PC, those are exploding everywhere. Everyone has their own. Microsoft came out with Access, and Borland has Paradox. Everyone has their own claim to fame in that market.
Now, differentiating a flat file from a relational. A flat file to me is just literally like a piece of paper with lines on it.
Exactly.
Where a relational, as you were saying, has more, what's the word I want to use? Relationships from one type of a database to one type of a file to another type of a file.
Right. Think of it as if I wanted to keep things in a flat file, and I wanted to store all the information I needed in just that one flat file, then depending on what the record stands for, I could have extra fields on there that mean absolutely nothing, such as an address. An address may not relate to a dog. You might have the owner, the two owners, and then the dog. And the dog's address means nothing. But that might be 100 or 200 bytes that is actually wasted on that. But if I can separate that into two different files and relate them by a unique key, then I'll cut down the amount of space that I'm using, and searching those two tables is going to be faster because I'm not going to be trying to find a dog's name in a file that I don't care about.
Sure.
Oh, great. Well, I can't wait to see the demonstration, but first we're going to have to pause to find out our trivia question.
You know, I still wish he'd tell us what the trivia questions were, you know, beforehand.
Well, you're not supposed to tell our audience that.
Well, I know that.
Well, later on, as usual, we'll be giving our trivia answer, but right now it's time to look at the demonstration on Paradox with Keith Woods.
What I'd like to do is just show, I'm actually going to start off with what could be a flat file, and then show you how you can start making it a little bit more relational. The tool that I'm going to be showing is Borland International's Paradox. The choice that I'm going to show here is the Paradox for DOS. There are two types. There's a Paradox for DOS and a Paradox for Windows, depending on your needs. This is the interface for it here. Every software has its own style of showing you the data, but what it's important to do when you talk about databases is to separate what you're looking at here behind the basic purpose that the database tool is to store the data and have the data available to whoever wants to access it. For instance, what I'm going to do is choose View here, and the only table that's in this directory, which is the customer table. And what this is there are 10 records on this Paradox table right now, and it's just pretty much basic data. There is a last name, find my cursor, a first name, first line of an address, a second line of an address just in case you need it, a city, a state, zip. It's pretty much information that most people would have about a group of people. I added a couple of other fields just to show you that there was a birthday, and then for this, they wanted to track how much this person purchased in 1992 sales. This is one table. To show you the structure of this table, and I do this just to show you what's available, you can see that the data elements are listed down, and on the right-hand side under field type is the type that it is. A is an alphanumeric. Down at the bottom, you can see a D is a date, and the dollar sign stands for a dollar amount. That's kind of a unique thing to Paradox, because if you try and think about what is a dollar amount in any coding language, it's not a number with two decimal places. It might be stored in a certain way. That's when you really start breaking down the difference between the different tools. Paradox will store its data in a different format than another database package, such as DBase or Microsoft Access. When you do that and you try and link the two tables together, you have a concern of how each package stores its data can be of a concern. On this table here, I only have one where it's really concerned. The date field here, I'm going to clear this. Go back up to the other table. Alphanumerics are pretty well safe. It has a fixed length. The one thing you have to start worrying about is the date. Now, what you see here is the date the first one on the screen is November 5th, 1977, but that may not be how the software package itself stores the date. It could be century, then year, then day, then month, or whatever. You do have to know that. Paradox is chosen a style I'm not going to get into, in a style for dollar amounts, but makes it very fast for access. When you specify a key, and on this table I've specified the key to be last name and first name, the way Paradox has stored the data, it makes it very fast access. It uses a binary search on those two fields in order to find it. It's proven to be much faster than the other products that I've seen.
At what point do you find a degradation in speed?
When, believe it or not, it's not when you have, say, 2 million records. That's not when you'll see the hit. The hit is when you have very wide records. Paradox is a relational database, or everyone has their own definition of what relational is. So take that as you will. It's a very good cut at a relational database, and it assumes very small record widths. And you really do, with Paradox, start taking a hit when the records start being well over 256 bytes. That seems to be the magic number. Or, one of the things unique about Paradox is when you have a large directory. All these database products, because they're historical and because what you just asked is a key concern when you start talking about historical data, all of a sudden you start getting very large directories. The directory starts to be huge. Now, every database product really does try to be as fast as possible. The fastest access that you can possibly have in the world is memory. Get it off the hard drive and put it into memory. What Paradox actually tries to do when you're coming into the directory is read as much of that directory into memory as at one time. So I've seen instances when there's been a directory that's been 45 megabytes in one directory. And just for Paradox to come in, I've waited, a minute and a half, 2 minutes for just a change into that directory, because Paradox is trying to read it all in and cache to the hard drive. Every one of the tools, Microsoft Access works better with DOS, because for some reason the same company wrote both. They all try to do those little tricks and when you choose your database product, it's important to know what those tricks are, what it's trying to do.
How easy is it to set up a database like this?
Pretty simple. What I'd like to do is, this is just one table. Obviously, when you enter data into this table, you might want to notify, say, your state. And so what I want to do is really quickly create a new table. I'll press F10 and choose Create. And I'll create just a state table. You can see how it's coming up and it's saying, okay, enter the fields and enter what they are. It gives you the help right online. This is very good for a DOS product. Windows, you expect to have the little buttons and clicks. So I'm just going to put in the state code here, and it's going to be alphanumeric 2. I'll put a star next to it, which means that's my key. I'll never have two state codes that are the same. And over here, I'll say state name, and that's going to be, can't spell Mississippi really fast in my head, but I'm going to bet it's less than 30. I pressed F2. F2, when you look at your database product, everyone has their special keys. In Paradox, F2 means do it, no matter what you're in. And now I'm going to view that table I just created. State. And you can see it's empty. Press F9, I can start adding MA. Is Massachusetts. See, I could simply choose much shorter names. But this is an example of how I very quickly created a table and it's easy to enter data into it. You might not, again, database products have their own special way of presenting data. With Paradox, I was very easy to take this, and I don't want to enter data into it like this. I'm a user, and I don't like having to scroll through everything, so I created a form.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we take a break? We'll go to the trivia answer, and when we come back, we'll look at your form.
Okay.
And we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Now that we've all gotten rid of our gum, why don't you start with your form, Keith?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to do is get into not only the database format, which you see here, but the tool that you choose really gets down into what you can do with it. In other words, in Paradox, you can choose a form. This is one example of a form where you just see one record at a time, and I can scroll through each record. And this might be one way that I choose to edit it, or I might choose to look at it in a different way. In other words, I might want to look at it where I just see several of those fields. There are a lot of fields on that table, but these are the only ones that I might want to look at and edit at one time. These are just data entry forms. In other words, ways that you can enter data into that one table, or I could take many tables and link them in one data view, such as this. The other thing about Paradox is outputs. That was the input. The outputs come in queries. And just to show you, having not know what I just hit there, change.
Well, it happens to everyone, right?
It's true.
Yes, yes. What I brought up here is just a report specification. Now, this doesn't look like much. And what this report format here does is creates an outerface file to WordPerfect. In other words, I don't have to just stay within my Paradox world. I can choose to keep my data in Paradox, and again, like I said before, the idea of a database is to give data to whoever wants it when they want it. You might choose to have a letter in Paradox and have the report come out here. For instance, report change, I'll show you another. This is one of the letters that I have just inside Paradox. And you can see it doesn't look like much, but all those A's stand for fields that are part of the table. If I run this report, you'll actually see that this becomes a letter.
Wow, that's great.
It seems to be taking its time, though, at this moment, for some reason. This is DOS working inside a window.
How fast is the laptop?
The laptop is pretty fast, but anytime you run DOS within Windows, you're looking at two things fighting each other. And what you have here is what this letter would look like inside Paradox. Now, there's not too much that you can do with this because Paradox doesn't know how to manipulate fonts and doesn't know how to play with special letters. That's one of the reasons why you might want to create a file that goes from Paradox to WordPerfect. And I've done that. In other words, that first report that we looked at, I said this to it. I said, report, output, this table. I said, I'm going to send this to a file. And I'll send this to a Tuesday.txt file. And what I'm doing is I'm taking that database data and I'm just writing it to a file in a format from Paradox. From there, I can exit Paradox because Paradox was holding on to the data. It did its job. It held on to the data, and I'm now going to use another tool, namely a word processing tool that a lot of people are familiar with, which is WordPerfect. And I'm going to merge that data in with another document that I've already written. Control F9, yeah. And here's the secondary file in WordPerfect is the one that I just created. And it's asking, in order to merge data in, it needs to know what are the field delimiters. In other words, what is separating each one field from the other. It might not be commas because in a name you could have, Woods, comma, Junior, and you don't want that to be broken apart. So in my example, just to make sure I was unique, I chose a character, the pipe, that I knew that no one else would have. And now it's merging with that file. It takes a little while with a merge. This is one of the problems with choosing to go from one package to another. I'm going from Paradox to WordPerfect, is that you're relying on a merge. You're relying on data that stays the same. But here's a letter. Each page is separate, and all the names are in all the right spots with the. And this is WordPerfect. Now the benefit of this is that WordPerfect is a package that a lot of people know. Word processing is very popular. It doesn't have to be WordPerfect. It could be Microsoft. It could be Word. It could be Multimate. It could be anything that the user community is already familiar with.
And when you're going to do a merge like this, you don't have to do the entire database. You can only do selected records if you wanted to.
You can slice off that data. And that's when you start realizing what a database really is. The database is separate from the package. You have tables out there that store data that just sit around there just for the one purpose of giving whoever wants the data. In this case, what I'm trying to do in this example here is to create a letter to all the people that I do business with. Now the best package to write letters is not Paradox. Paradox is a database package. So you want to have Paradox, which is holding onto the data, provide WordPerfect in this instance with the data. And now I can play around with fonts. And I don't have to change every page of this letter. I can just, in the merge facility with any data, in any word processing package, all you have to do is change that one primary file, change the fonts there, and it'll change everywhere.
Is it possible for you to go back into Paradox and show us how you'd set up a query?
Yes, it is. 7.
Santa Claus.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of this is the mystery, and unfortunately, with most things, when you look at it for the first time, you're not really looking at it to understand or trying to catch everything. You want to see that quick hit, and that's what I tried to show with that first shot. Now you have to start filling in some of the voids. In other words, okay, you had 10 records there, but I only wanted the first 5. Paradox comes in 2 different interfaces, if you like the mouse or the format that we had before. What I'm going to do in Paradox is called an ask. An ask is a query. I'm going to ask against that. I'm going to first get to the right directory. I'm going to ask against that customer table. Paradox is very famous for its queries, its ask facility, because it's very easy to go in and say, I want this field, I want this field, don't give me that one, don't give me that one, give me the states, give me the birthday, give me the sales, and I'll come back to state and I'll say, just give me Massachusetts. I'll press F2.
That's very easy.
And you can see that there's only 4 records of those 10 that were from Massachusetts. I can break it down even faster, right? I can break this down even more and say that it's anyone who is greater than 160 for a birthday. Well, there's still 4 records. Okay, that's a bad example. But you can set your criteria pretty fast, and it's pretty explanatory because you're putting the data right into the field that it applies to. And the check mark is saying, yep, I want that field. The final thing that you can do with this is do calculated fields. In other words, I can say calc this plus 100 just to see what they would have had. Mm-hmm. And you can get answers really fast and work with the data. The idea of a database is not to store calculated fields, though. If I can calculate a field, then I don't want to store it. Again, speed in Paradox is a shorter record. So if you go and add calculated fields, you're making your application slower.
Right. That is something else. What do you think, Rainey?
I'm impressed. I'm impressed. You're going to leave this one to me. What makes Paradox different than other databases such as DBase or Access?
Just the file format. Like I said, the file format distinguishes each package as far as how fast it can search through a file and find particular records, or how fast it can search through a file and calculate another record and give you an answer. Paradox has got a pretty well acclaimed file format as far as how fast you can use it. That doesn't mean that in order for me to do any kind of database format, the best thing that I can do is go out and buy Paradox. That's saying the best thing that you can do is go out and use Paradox tables. You might want to go and find another programming tool that will use Paradox tables very easily. You might find something that's even easier than this, even though this is pretty easy.
Well, thanks, Keith.
It is, yes, for a terrific demonstration of Paradox.
That's right.
Loads of fun.
Lots of fun. Databases is something that's always sort of mystified me, so, and that's something
I'm sure.
Oh,
Just fooling.
oh, what a slam, what a slam. If anybody out there has any questions or any comments about the show, well, we'd like to hear from you. So what we're going to do, I guess, is we're going to go to the address.
Oh, yes, of course. And please don't hesitate to write in and ask any questions or comments, anything.
Any suggestions, whatever. Then we'll be right back.
Hi, welcome back. Well, we only have a few minutes left, or a few seconds, a few seconds left.
We have a lot of time to fill here.
Oh, not too much at all.
Well, we have just enough time to thank Keith for bringing in Paradox and
Yep,
showing
thank
us
you,
how to
It
use
was a
that.
lot of fun, it really was.
Good, good. Well, learn something else. You can come in and talk to us about that too.
Sure, anytime.
And I guess that's going to be about it.
That's it for today.
That's right, that's right. I'm Rainey Laviolette,
And I'm Diana McLean.
and we'll see you next time on PC Voyage.